My sister blamed me for everything. My parents believed her. Today, they showed up crying. I still remember the sound of the knock on my door that morning. 3 soft taps, like someone afraid of being heard. I wasn't expecting anyone, not anymore, not after everything. So, when I opened the door and saw my parents standing there, disheveled, eyes swollen, tears streaming down their faces, I didn't say a word. They stood on my porch like strangers, and for a moment, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a cold emptiness where family used to live. It had been 10 years since they last looked me in the eye. 10 years since my sister, Emily, told them I had done something unthinkable. 10 years since they believed every word without even asking me what happened. And now, here they were, crying, begging to talk, begging to apologize. But it was too late, because the truth they had refused to hear a decade ago had finally surfaced. And I wasn't the same daughter they once knew. You see, when you're blamed for something you didn't do, when your own family turns their back on you without a second thought, you change. And this is the story of how one lie ruined everything I loved and how the truth finally broke the silence. But I promise you, no one was ready for what came next. If you were in my shoes, would you open the door and let them in? Comment below and tell me what you'd do. And if stories like this speak to your heart, subscribe, because what I'm about to share is something I've never told anyone, not even my closest friends. My name is Rachel, and for most of my childhood, I believed my family was normal. We weren't rich or glamorous. We lived in a modest house in a quiet suburb in Virginia, with a white picket fence and a backyard my dad took too much pride in. My mom stayed home, always baking, always cleaning. And Emily, my younger sister by 2 years, was the golden child. She had this charm about her. Big blue eyes, a sweet voice, the kind of girl who could cry on command and melt hearts without trying. Everyone loved her. Teachers, neighbors, relatives, they all used to say, "You two are so lucky to have each other." But the truth was, I was always walking on eggshells around her. At first, I thought it was just sibling rivalry, little things. Like when Emily broke a vase and told Mom I did it, and my mom didn't even ask for my side. Or when Emily took money from Dad's wallet, and I got grounded for it. Back then, I thought, it's just easier to take the blame. But over time, something shifted. I was 17, she was 15, when it started getting serious. That year, I got a part-time job at a local bookstore. I loved it. It was quiet, peaceful, and for the first time, I had a little independence. I'd save every penny I earned. I had dreams. College. Maybe moving to New York one day. I even opened a savings account without telling anyone. And then one day, the money disappeared. All of it. At first, I thought it was some kind of bank error. But the teller pulled up a withdrawal slip, with my name signed on it. A signature that looked enough like mine to fool anyone who didn't know better. I froze. When I got home, my parents were already waiting for me in the living room. Emily sat quietly on the couch, eyes red, acting like she had been crying for hours. My dad's voice shook as he asked me, "Rachel, how could you?" I tried to speak, to explain, but they already had a story in their heads. Emily had told them that I had been sneaking around with some older guy, that I was planning to run away with him, and that I used the money to buy clothes and a bus ticket. It was so absurd I almost laughed. But when I looked at my mother, her eyes filled with disgust. I realized they believed her. Not once did they ask me if it was true. I remember standing there, mouth open, heartbeat pounding in my ears, trying to make sense of what was happening. "After everything we've done for you," my mom said, "you repay us like this?" I went to bed that night numb. I stared at the ceiling until morning, wondering how my own sister could lie like that, and how the 2 people who raised me could believe her so blindly. It didn't end there. From that day on, everything I said or did was questioned. My curfew was stricter, my phone was checked, my emails monitored. And Emily? She walked around the house like a wounded angel, quiet, fragile, untouchable. I was the villain in my own home, and I hadn't even figured out why yet. But deep down, something told me this wasn't just teenage spite. She was planning something bigger. The days that followed felt like walking through fog. I went to school, went to work, came home, but I wasn't really there. I kept asking myself, why would Emily do this to me? We weren't best friends, sure, but we were sisters. We shared a room for years. We laughed at the same dumb movies. I helped her sneak snacks after bedtime. We had history. Didn't that count for something? The tension at home grew heavier with each passing day. My parents barely looked at me unless it was to ask where I was going or what I was doing. My father even installed a lock on his office drawer, because, I assume, they thought I might steal from them again. But then came the night everything shifted. It was a Saturday. My parents had gone out to dinner for their anniversary, and I was home alone with Emily. She was in her room, and I was supposed to be doing laundry. As I passed her bedroom door, I heard a sound. A soft giggle. Then a voice. A male voice. I paused. I pressed my ear to the door, and I heard him. "You are so bad," he said, laughing. Then Emily replied, "She still doesn't suspect anything. She's too busy playing the victim." My blood ran cold. I didn't think. I just pushed the door open. There she was, lying on her bed, feet crossed in the air, twirling a piece of her hair, phone on speaker. She looked up, startled. "Rachel, don't you knock?" But I didn't care. "Who were you talking to?" I asked, heart pounding. She smirked. "None of your business." Then she picked up her phone and ended the call. That was it. The mask slipped. Just for a second. But it was enough. I walked back to my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and started to cry. Not because I was sad, but because I was furious. Furious that I'd been made into the villain. Furious that my parents had fed into it. And most of all, furious that Emily had won. But now I knew the truth. She was hiding something. I waited until the next day. When she left the house, I went into her room. It was a risk, yes, but I had to know. I started going through her drawers, carefully lifting notebooks and boxes. Nothing seemed out of place. Then, behind her dresser, I found an old shoebox. Inside, a prepaid phone, a stack of printed photos of me, taken secretly at work, at school, even outside the house. A notepad full of notes and scribbles, dates, times, names. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Then I found it. A folded piece of paper with my name forged at the bottom. It was a practice version of the withdrawal slip. And behind that, several notes that said things like, "Use this next time. They'll believe you if you cry a little. Say she was sneaking out again and worked last time." It wasn't just a lie. It was a campaign. A setup. A carefully designed plan to ruin me. I don't remember putting everything back. I don't even remember leaving the room. But I do remember locking my bedroom door and sitting on the floor in complete silence for hours. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and made a promise to myself. I would not let her win again. But I also knew something else. I couldn't go to my parents with this. Not yet. They weren't ready to hear the truth. Not from me. They needed to see it for themselves. So I started my own plan. Quietly. Carefully. If Emily wanted to play games, then I'd make sure she played by my rules. From the outside, nothing changed. I still went to school. I still went to work. I still came home and sat quietly at the dinner table while Emily told stories and my parents nodded along like she was the second coming of Cinderella. But on the inside, I was different. I had stopped waiting for someone to save me. I was going to save myself. The first thing I did was buy a small voice recorder. Just a simple one I could hide in my backpack or jacket. I knew Emily was smart, calculated even, but no one is perfect. Sooner or later, she'd slip, and when she did, I'd be ready. At night, I'd write in a private journal, documenting everything, times, dates, what was said, what I overheard, what I found in her room. I started printing copies of the photos I found in the shoebox. I made backups. I emailed them to myself from a hidden account. I wasn't going to let anything disappear if she ever found out I was onto her. It felt like I was building a case, like I was a detective in my own story. Then came the second phase, rebuilding my credibility, little by little. I started offering to help my mom in the kitchen again. I cleaned without being asked. I offered to drive my dad to his appointments. At first, they looked at me with suspicion, like I had some hidden motive. But eventually, they started softening. I knew it wasn't love. Not yet. But it was enough to plant a seed. Maybe Rachel isn't who we thought she was. And then one day, the opportunity I'd been waiting for arrived. It was a Sunday afternoon. Emily had a friend over, Chloe. They were in her room with the door closed. I was upstairs, just a few steps away. I slipped the recorder into my hoodie pocket and moved down the hall slowly, pretending to be on my phone. The door was cracked just enough for voices to drift out. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," Emily said, laughing. "She still thinks it was her own fault. You should have seen her face when I told Mom she was seeing that creepy guy from the bookstore." Chloe snorted. "You're evil." And then Emily said it. "It's not my fault she was always the favorite until I started telling the truth. Now I've got them wrapped around my finger. Honestly, she deserves it." I had the entire conversation recorded. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel relief. I felt something colder. Certainty. This wasn't just sibling rivalry. This was revenge. And I didn't even know what I had done to deserve it. That night, I copied the audio file onto a flash drive, along with scanned versions of her forged notes, the fake signature, everything. I put the flash drive in a sealed envelope with the words, "In case you ever doubt me again." And then I waited. I didn't want to expose her, not yet. I wanted them to figure it out on their own, to finally see what I had been trying to say for years. So I played the long game. I kept smiling. I kept showing up. I let Emily dig her own grave, one lie at a time. And then about 2 months later, it happened. She got sloppy. She borrowed our dad's credit card to buy something online and then told him he must have left it at the gas station. My dad, usually calm, usually trusting, checked the purchase history. It was an order for makeup and clothes shipped to our house. In her name. He was stunned. For the first time, he confronted her. And what did Emily do? She cried. Of course she did. She said, "Rachel must have used it. She's trying to make me look bad." But this time, my dad didn't believe her. He came to me, quietly, sat down at the kitchen table and said, "Rachel, did you use my card?" I looked him in the eye, slid the envelope across the table and said, "Before you ask me anything else, listen to this." My father didn't say a word for a long time. He sat there at the kitchen table, holding the envelope like it was something dangerous, like opening it might tear our family in half. And in a way, it would. But he did open it, and he listened. I stayed in the room while the recording played. Emily's voice was sharp, careless, bragging, the kind of cruelty that can't be faked. Every sentence was a blade. When it ended, my dad looked up at me with something I hadn't seen in years. Remorse. "Why didn't you show us this sooner?" he whispered. I shrugged. "You wouldn't have believed me." And that was the truth. He didn't argue. He just nodded, slowly, and then stood up and left the room, envelope in hand. What happened next didn't explode. It unraveled. Over the next few weeks, things got quiet. My dad started watching Emily differently. He questioned her when she spoke. My mom noticed, too. There were small arguments behind closed doors. Emily still tried to play her part, but the performance had cracks now, and I knew they saw it. I, on the other hand, kept my distance. I didn't gloat. I didn't push. I let them sit with the weight of what they had ignored. It was a strange time. I had dreamed for years of the moment they'd finally believe me. But now that it was happening, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Emily, of course, knew something was off. She came into my room one night, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "What did you say to them?" I didn't answer. I was brushing my hair, facing the mirror. She stepped closer. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Trying to turn them against me now?" I looked at her reflection in the mirror. "You did that all by yourself," she scoffed. "They'll never choose you over me. Never. You're just bitter." And then she left. It was the last time we spoke in that house, because 2 weeks later, everything came crashing down. My father found the prepaid phone she had hidden in her closet. My mom discovered more forged notes tucked inside the lining of an old purse. The evidence became impossible to deny. And the final blow? An email from one of Emily's teachers, saying she had been caught cheating, again, and blamed it on someone else. The story didn't hold. She was suspended. That night, I came home to find my parents in the living room. They didn't yell. They didn't cry. They just looked broken. "We owe you an apology," my mother said, eyes full of shame. "A real one." I said nothing. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. Emily didn't come home that night. I don't know where she went. And to be honest, I didn't care. The house was quiet for days. No arguments, no fake stories, no tension, just silence. It should have felt peaceful, but it didn't. Because even though I had been vindicated, even though they finally believed me, the damage had already been done. They had chosen her over me for years. They let her manipulate them, and they let her erase me. You don't forget something like that. And I knew, deep down, things would never go back to the way they were. If your family betrayed you like this, would you forgive them once they saw the truth? Or would you walk away to protect yourself? Tell me in the comments below. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe. There's still more to come. I wish I could say that once the truth came out, everything fell into place. But life rarely works that way. Emily didn't come home that night, or the night after. After 3 days, my parents filed a missing persons report. But deep down, I think they knew. She had run, not out of fear, not out of regret, but because the one thing she couldn't handle was losing control of the story. I tried to stay out of it. I really did. I had spent too many years being dragged through the mud by her lies. Now that the curtain had fallen, I wanted peace, but peace didn't come. Instead, I got a message from an unknown number. Just a single sentence. Don't act like you're innocent either. I stared at it for a long time. My hands went cold. Was it her? A week later, I got another one. You think they love you now? You think that fixes everything? And then, I can still ruin you. Don't forget that. I didn't show the messages to my parents. I didn't respond either. I just took screenshots and added them to my ever-growing file. But what truly shook me wasn't the messages. It was what came next. My mom started slipping. One afternoon, I overheard her telling my aunt that maybe Emily hadn't meant to lie, that she had probably made mistakes, but she was still just a child. That sentence stopped me cold. A child? Emily had spent years planting evidence, forging signatures, manipulating her way through life, and now, after everything, my mother was trying to soften the truth again. I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to believe it was grief or denial. But then, one morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, looking through an old photo album. She pointed to a picture of the two of us, me and Emily, dressed as princesses for Halloween. She loved you, she said. She just didn't know how to show it. And that's when I realized they hadn't really changed. They felt guilty, yes. They regretted hurting me, yes. But they still needed Emily to be something she wasn't. They still needed to believe they hadn't been fooled for years by their favorite. They wanted a clean ending, an easy forgiveness. And I couldn't give that to them. I couldn't rewrite the story to make it more comfortable for them to live with. So that night, I sat them down, calmly, no drama, no accusations. I said, "You chose to believe her lies over my truth for years. And even now, when the truth is undeniable, I see you trying to protect the memory of who you thought she was. That's your choice. But I get to choose too. And I'm choosing not to carry this weight anymore. I'm done trying to prove myself. I'm done explaining." They tried to protest. My mom cried. My dad said he understood but asked if I'd at least stay close. I nodded, but I had already made up my mind. The next day, I packed my things and moved in with a friend from work, temporarily until I found a place of my own, and I started fresh. No more defending myself, no more looking over my shoulder. I changed my number, blocked the messages, left the file of evidence in a safe deposit box, just in case, and I walked away. Not because I didn't care, but because I had finally learned the difference between peace and pretending. Freedom didn't look like I thought it would. It wasn't fireworks or some dramatic moment of closure. It was quiet mornings, long walks, the first deep breath I'd taken in years. I found a small apartment not far from work. Just one bedroom, barely enough space for my things, but it was mine. Every object in that place belonged to someone who had learned how to survive. And every day I woke up a little lighter. I started journaling again, not out of pain, but out of reflection. I wrote about what happened, yes, but more importantly, I wrote about who I was becoming. And then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. I received a letter. It was handwritten. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. Emily. I stared at it for hours before opening it. Inside a single page. You think you won, but all you did was run away. You've always been good at pretending to be the victim. Enjoy your little life. They'll turn on you again. Just wait. I didn't cry. I didn't even get angry. I smiled, because it was the proof I hadn't known I needed. Not for anyone else, but for me. Emily hadn't changed. Not even a little. She hadn't learned a thing. And that meant I had done the right thing by leaving it all behind. But still, that little voice whispered, should I send the letter to my parents? Let them see what she really is? And then I realized I didn't need to. They already knew. Whether they admitted it out loud or not, they knew. And that was my emotional victory. That was my justice. Because I didn't have to scream to be heard anymore. I didn't have to explain myself to be believed. I had my truth. I had my peace. And I had finally stopped asking people who hurt me to help me heal. Weeks turned into months. One day, I bumped into my mother at the grocery store. She looked older, tired. There was a sadness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She reached for my arm gently. Rachel, can we talk sometime? Just talk? I looked at her, the woman who had raised me, who had once believed in me, then turned her back, who had chosen silence when I needed protection. And I said softly with no anger, maybe, but not today. I wasn't ready to open that door. And I didn't owe it to anyone to do it before I was. I walked out of the store with my head high, not because I had won, but because I had finally stopped playing the game. That's the thing about emotional justice. It doesn't come with applause or revenge. It comes with release. Some people think closure comes when you get an apology, when the people who hurt you finally say, I was wrong. But that's not always true. Sometimes closure is just waking up one day and realizing you don't feel the pain anymore. It had been almost a year since I'd left that house. Emily never came back. Rumors came and went. People said they saw her in another state, that she was couch surfing, maybe even working under a fake name. I didn't follow the trail. I didn't want to know, because the part of me that had once obsessed over her, that part had healed. And my parents? We spoke a few times. Short phone calls. Awkward attempts at reconnection. My father asked about my work. My mother sent me a birthday card. But the bond wasn't the same. It never would be. And strangely, I was okay with that. Because now, I had myself. I had built a life from the pieces she tried to break. I had rediscovered the sound of my own laughter. I had friends who knew my side of the story. Not because I had to explain it, but because they met me as I was. Honest, strong, and whole. One night, I was walking home from work when I passed a mother and her 2 daughters. The younger one tripped, and the older one helped her up, brushing dirt from her knees. They laughed, and the mother looked at them with that glowing warmth only a mother can have, and I felt something stir in me. Not pain, not jealousy, just grief. Grief for what I never had, for what I once believed was possible. But grief is not weakness. It's acknowledgement. It's what allows you to put the past in its rightful place, behind you. That night, I lit a candle in my apartment. I sat down with my journal and wrote the last page in that chapter of my life. She didn't win. They didn't break me. And I don't need them to see it. I see it. And that's enough. I closed the journal, blew out the candle, and smiled. This was my ending. Quiet. Real. Free. And maybe someday I'll talk to my parents again. Maybe I won't. Maybe Emily will resurface, trying to rewrite the narrative one last time. But I know who I am now, and I've learned that sometimes the most powerful revenge is peace. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from zero? Not with revenge, but with silence and strength? Would you have forgiven your family? Or walked away like I did? Me conta aquí nos comentarios. And if this story moved something inside you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel, because this was only one of many stories still waiting to be told.